Okay, so today I'm interviewing my brother Ben Swanson. And to begin, could you just talk a little bit about yourself and tell me like what you do in life and where you work and everything?
Absolutely. So I am an elementary school general music teacher. I am in my fourth year of teaching, and I teach instruments, singing, chorus, band, and musical theater. I'm currently a teacher in Fairfax County Public Schools, and I'm teaching right now K through 5. And in addition to that, I am an associate director of a nonprofit, Advocates for Clean and Clear Waterways, that does environmental work. But everything has moved virtually now, so it is a whole new world of working and teaching.
Yeah, so that kind of goes into what I'm talking about now. So for the class that I'm interviewing you for, I've basically just been learning about different people's problems, and a problem I've been focusing on is the transition from in-person classes to online classes, especially when it comes to like college courses. But I'm also taking a look at how people are transitioning in like elementary or high school because that's different than the college experience. And so could you just kind of go through how you specifically transitioned from in-person classes to online classes and how like you were able to make that work?
Yeah, so at the end of last school year, I was teaching at a pre-K through 7 school, and I was still teaching music, all of those different elements in music as well. And when March hit and COVID hit, we had to switch almost instantly to virtual learning. And as as a music teacher, that was extremely difficult. Music is extremely hands-on. We have all of the instruments. We have singing going on. Musical theater contains a lot of movement and dance and interactive activities. And so that was extremely challenging to move all of that to virtual in the matter of basically 2 days. Um, one week we were in school, and then the weekend happened, and then on Monday there was a work day, and Tuesday we had classes again. So it's been extremely difficult. It started off last year when we moved to virtual as sort of a transition to choice boards. And choice boards are basically graphic organizers that list a set of activities, music activities, and the other specials in the school as well, like art, library, and PE. And so we compiled a bunch of choice boards for our students, and we sent them out to them. Now, at the end of last year, another element that made it difficult was that it was completely new. We didn't have really any time to prepare for the virtual learning. And so we also didn't have protocols in place necessarily to make sure that students were attending sessions or doing the work. So since specials were moved almost completely to choice boards, we had to rely on parents and students themselves to download the choice board, do the activities, parents to monitor the activities and make sure they actually get done, and then we've asked them to send them back to us. So the retention rate of students last year was not the greatest, unfortunately, just due to the circumstances of everything. This year, my school district has invested a lot of time in training for teachers to move into virtual learning. And I will be actually teaching entire classes of students virtually via a video platform just like Zoom. So in that sense, it is going to be much better. Music teachers are pushing into the classroom, so the students will be in one classroom basically for the entire day with their homeroom core content teachers, and then the music teachers will push into those classrooms. So we don't have to rely on kids coming into our own virtual classroom or finding us or being available at the right time because they'll already be there. So that is one element that's going to make it a little bit easier. In
So it's
terms
kind of
of,
like, sorry to interrupt, it's kind of more like schedulized.
yep,
So they have their whole day scheduled out, and then at this time, you're automatically like put on their screen so that you have your class.
yep, exactly. So it's it's going to reflect more so what an actual school day is like in person. except for just on a virtual platform. That being said, we still have to rely on students and parents to log in, to stay logged in for the specials classes. And then moving sort of to the content of music class, music is, like I said, super hands-on. Instruments, singing, movement, dance, musical theater elements, theater games, all of that tied in together. So we are significantly changing what music class looks like. We have to be aware of things now, like all the students are not going to be able to sing at the same time. If all of them have their microphone turned on and are singing, it is not going to work out because it's just going to be this crazy whirlwind of sound, and it's going to glitch out and not sound good. So we're having to think through different strategies in terms of microphones and using those in an optimal way to assess students singing and to just have them participate in the activities as well. For instruments, we are not sending home xylophones and ukuleles and recorders and everything that we usually have access to in the school with the students. So the instrument portion is going to move more for me toward making your own instruments at home, seeing what household materials and supplies you have that you can turn into your own makeshift instrument. And then from there, we're going to be working a lot on rhythm, solfege, the different sort of technical and literacy aspects of music, and assessing those. And there's going to be some asynchronous work at home for students to do and different activities for them to explore. So the focus has shifted a lot from hands-on activities we can do all at the same time to a mix of instruction that does not place as much emphasis on everybody doing everything at the same time, with some added elements outside of class that we're expecting students to participate in.
So you kind of touched on a couple different things, but what would you say are the three biggest difficulties or problems that you faced in this whole entire transition?
I think I'd say first of all, retaining students and making sure that they attend classes or do activities, whatever it may be. That is a significant challenge. Not everybody has access to technology. Not everybody has access to the same type of internet connection. And that can go a long way, because if they have internet, but some of these families that we teach have either a multifamily household or they have 5 or 6 kids in their household that are all on the same internet connection. So internet difficulties will be something that'll affect the retention of students and the ability for them to actually access the classes. And then in addition to that, when we ask them to do things, we are relying completely on the families to make sure that those activities are getting done. So I'd say that is number one. Number two is going to be sort of shifting the mindset from in-person experiences. When I teach music, it's a very experiential class. So I want the students to experience being immersed in music in terms of listening to it, feeling it, participating in it via singing and instruments, as well as movement activities where they're really feeling it in their body physically and kinesthetically. So all of those elements are looking totally different in virtual schooling. I can't be there to do folk dances with my students, for example, as a movement element. We can't all sing together at the same time necessarily with our microphones on and be able to hear each other. We can do solos here and there where one student or a few students for a trio or something turn their microphone on and we listen to them at the same time. We can't do big group songs together out loud. So there's going to be a lot of student accountability that we are relying on. So all those in-person, hands-on, experiential elements are going to be another challenge. And then I'd say the third challenge is going to be assessment. When you're in class, in person with students, you can assess them much easier, especially in a class like music, where it is all based on participation, basically, and them giving you something that is like personal from their body, not necessarily turning in an assignment or a test or a quiz. but instead we assess their singing, we assess their instrument playing, we assess their rhythm literacy, rhythm syllables, solfege, all these different elements. And so assessment's going to look extremely different and be a big challenge. Going off of that, we grade by standards, and actually we call them benchmarks because not every student is going to be at the same standard. So it's hard to say, okay, everybody needs to be at a 4th grade standard and then have them all get there, because everybody's musical journey looks different. And it's difficult to say everybody needs to be here. So in virtual training or virtual education, there is going to be a lot more leniency sort of on the benchmarks, especially because all of this came out of the blue in March. So students have not had really direct music instruction since March. So it's been months and months, the whole summer, and there's going to be some regression, that they're not going to be at the same level that they were before. And so we're going to have a whole wide array of abilities and literacies to take into account when we're assessing them.
So out of those 3, you gave me like retaining, making sure the students are attending class and doing their work, the in-person experience versus like online in relation to how they're like feeling with the music and being able to like actually express the music through technology to you, and then assessing them. Which one would you say is gonna be the most difficult for you guys for you specifically to kind of combat?
I would say a mix of the first two. They kind of go hand in hand. Asking the students to do the activities in music looks completely different than asking them to complete some math work or to read a book, for example. So since music relies so heavily on outside elements and resources and materials and supplies, I would say that the shift to completely virtual is going to affect that significantly, and that is possibly the most challenging element of it. We're looking at a lot more technology-based music activities, so different websites they can go to, videos they can watch, things they can participate and manipulate online, such as the Google Chrome Music Lab, where they're still actively making music and creating music and analyzing and synthesizing all of that and all of the concepts, but it's going to be very difficult to ensure that they are singing and to ensure that they have something at home, because a lot of them are not going to have anything at home. So I think the shift from using all of these resources that we normally have in person to going all virtual, and then in the same respect, making sure that they are holding themselves accountable and actually participating in activities and doing things that we ask them to do, when it's like rhythm activities where they're tapping on their desk or snapping or doing body percussion or participating in some kind of movement activity. Those two things kind of go hand in hand, because without the resources, it's hard to make sure that they're actually doing them.
Mm-hmm. So going into like the technology-based like music learning and what you have found, why is that not going to provide them the same experience that it would in person? Like, what are they like losing out on things that they would normally have if they were in person with you?
So the most immediate thing that they're losing out on is the actual instruments and actually experiencing the sensation of touching a tabano drum or strumming a ukulele or putting their mouth on a recorder and blowing the air into it and working on their breath flow and airflow. So I don't like to say that they're completely losing out on it, because of course the goal is to make this transition as seamless as possible and to find creative, innovative ways for them to still experience the same things at home without these resources. But the fact of the matter is just that they're losing out on the actual instruments. It's going to be very difficult. We might be able to get them recorders at home. That is definitely something we're looking into. There might be a a point at which we're able to get them ukuleles at home or ukuleles for a ukulele club, but it's certainly not going to be the same. We are doing everything we can to make it as seamless as possible. Like I said, there are different options online for virtual instruments so they can still hear the instruments. There are a lot of good listening activities and activities where they can really become really well acquainted with the instruments. But again, it's not the same as holding an instrument in your hand. Going off of the musical theater element of it, it's going to be very interesting because we are holding musical theater club at our school, and we are looking into virtual musical options. So, like I said before, it's really about just finding creative, innovative approaches to make sure that they are experiencing the music and being totally immersed in the music and these activities and experiences to make as little gap as possible between virtual and in person.
I'm kind of gonna switch base here. How would you feel this, like if you were teaching at a college level a music course, how would that be different from your experience that you have now with, like, you're teaching kids who are really, really little and they might need more guidance and stuff like that? How would it exactly be different? And would it be easier? Would it be harder? Would there be more access to different resources for us?
So first and foremost, the age difference is night and day. I am teaching kindergartners who have never been to school before, who have never experienced any kind of virtual learning before, who some of them are not going to be able to put complete sentences together and can't read and can't write and can't type on a computer. So I think the maturity aspect of it is huge. With elementary school, students get into routines and students do learn very, very quickly. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but there is going to be a point at which everybody is pretty much on the same page and everybody is feeling pretty good, hopefully, about their virtual education. At a college level, we're working with adults, right? So to college students, I can use probably more advanced technological platforms. College resources are sometimes different as well, and access to those resources sometimes are given directly from the school. In elementary school, they still are, but the access level is a little bit different for college students. For virtual learning, college students most likely have a little bit more accountability. They're not necessarily relying on their parents to make sure that they're attending class, and their work ethic looks different as well. So I'd say the maturity aspect of it and the age difference is a huge factor in the differences for it. So with college students in music, a lot of college students as well will have their own instrument at home, because for a college music major, for example, and of course not everybody's a music major who participates in music, but for a college music major, they're going to have their own instrument. That is their major instrument, unless they're a vocalist. But for vocalists, there's a lot more individual instruction as well, so they're not necessarily going to need a bunch of instruments for their classes necessarily all the time. And then going off of that, all music students usually have a significant portion of individualized instruction. So that's going to be one-on-one with the teacher. That's another element that looks different. College lends itself to a lot more one-on-one activities and educational opportunities, because you're learning your craft on your own instrument and you are sort of working at perfecting that. Whereas in elementary school and high school, you are with an entire group of students throughout the day, and the teacher is responsible for managing that entire group of 20 to 30 students. So there are a lot more moving parts in elementary school. And in college, the maturity plays into it, more accountable, better work ethic a lot of the time. And so there's more of a chance for it to work out and more productivity to occur.
I'm gonna jump back to I'd kind of like to focus more on what you were saying about like assessing the students and what feedback you are able to give them. So, how are you going to go about like assessing them and giving them feedback, and how is the inability to be directly with them, like this is how you properly hold this instrument, this is how you properly like will feel your vocals when you're singing, like how is that going to be affected now that you are doing it over like Zoom?
So there is a significant amount of deterioration that happens just with the quality of what I'm going to be assessing. So in person, I can hear very clearly what the student's voice sounds like. I can see very clearly how they look and how their body is reacting and responding when they're performing, whether an instrument or singing or a theater piece. But virtually, there is lag, there is audio lag, there is audio deterioration and fuzziness and scratchiness. There are a lot of different factors that play into it, into the actual product that I am assessing. So that is a significant challenge in that. Different ways that we are going to go about assessing, though, are, well, I'll start with one. There's an application called Flipgrid, and that allows students to go in and create a short video and submit that video confidentially to the teacher. So if I have students, we'll say, for example, 3rd grade, and we've been doing a recorder unit, they've been learning how to hold the recorder, they've been learning how to play the recorder, the breath management and all of that, the different fingerings. If I have songs that I would like to test them on, I can then say, okay, let's go to Flipgrid. Here's your song. They'll already have the music, the sheet music. They'll already have all the basics for it. And I'll say, okay, here we go. Record yourself playing this song and then submit it to me. And from there, I can individualize my assessment. I think individual assessment tools like that are going to be crucial in virtual learning, because when we have a platform in which everybody is on their own video at the same time in the same classroom, that's going to be very difficult to assess individual students. And it's even going to be difficult to assess the class as a whole, because again, technology issues are going to happen. We're going to have different students with different accessibility, with different work ethics and accountability to actually use the technology properly. And so individualized assessment methods like Flipgrid are going to be incredibly useful. There are also assessment methods that we can put into Google Slides presentations. There's an application called Pear Deck, which allows you to make Google Slides presentations interactive. So I can share a Google Slide presentation with the students and put interactive assessment tools in that. Even simple things just like, how are you feeling today? On a scale of 1 to 10, and 1 is I'm feeling very low, 10 is I'm feeling amazing. And they can go on the slide, and I open it up to them, and they go on there individually and they move the slider. So different assessment techniques for the content, but as well as the social emotional aspects of education are going to be done through Pear Deck and different things like that. Also, use of poll features on video conferences. We're using a video platform called Blackboard Collaborate, and that includes functions like a chat where I can assess what students are saying, different student answers in the chat, polls where I can put a poll out with a question that has either true or false or multiple choice on it, and they select their own answer and submit it privately so that I only see the answers. But like I said before, music before COVID, before virtual learning, included a lot of assessment that was whole group. You include assessment of the whole group singing like in a choir, the whole group's playing like in a band or a xylophone ensemble. And so that element of whole group assessment is kind of going to shift more toward a lot more individualized assessment, and it's going to be through different virtual platforms. With the instruments, there's going to be a lot of just visual and sort of technique questions as well. And then literacy, there's going to be a lot of questions and sort of interactive activities that they can do on the slides that will then provide me feedback about how they're doing.
Okay. So you have a lot on your plate for this year coming up. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I think the only thing I want to add is that everybody really in the world has made a giant shift to virtual. And I think that there are a lot of solutions out there, and there are going to be a lot of moments of heartache out there when we're trying to use the technological elements and try to transfer everything over to that. But I think it's really sort of an opportunity for inspiration and innovation and creativity, because there is a way to do it. And in education, I mean, with whatever you're doing, the mission that you are working toward is always at the forefront of your operations and your activities and your work. So I think it's a really interesting time. It's a really challenging time for sure, but it's interesting because if you keep that mission at the forefront of what you're doing, like with teaching, the kids are what matter. The kids are who we need to be aware of, and their education is extremely important. So if you keep that mission at the forefront of what you're doing, you're going to find innovative solutions. So I think it's all about trying different things, making mistakes, falling down, and getting back up and trying new innovative, creative approaches to make it work.
Great. Well, thank you for letting me interview you.
Absolutely.
I'm going to stop the recording now.